Welcome to the Uplifting Podcast. Today we talk to Heidi Dehnel, the host of the Future is Female Powerlifting Podcast and the owner of Core Strength and Performance, a gym out in Huntsville, Alabama.
We talked to her about her journey into fitness after divorce and how it has evolved from Zumba to powerlifting.
We talk about the strength that she has found through powerlifting, not only physically, but also in her relationships with herself and others.
We talk about the biggest lessons she learned from her divorce and how that led to her finding her ideal partner and powerlifting.
Now let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Uplifting Podcast with your hosts, Randy and Catherine.
This is a space for powerful women to share their story and to be real and raw about the truth of living your life's purpose.
Any topic is fair game. We check gossip at the door so we can focus on building community and collaboration.
This podcast will help you discover your individual power and give you the tools to live your most uplifted life.
So let's find out what's uplifting you today. Welcome to the Uplifting Podcast. Today we have Heidi, and Heidi is a competitive powerlifter, gym owner, and the host of the Future is Female Powerlifting podcast. Yes, she is also a former Tahiti dancer, and she now is an event host and coordinator for the Tahiti Fete. So I welcome Heidi so much.
Thank you.
So great to have you today on the Uplifting Podcast and to finally meet you. You know, we were talking before we actually started recording about how we have so many friends in common, both being powerlifters, but also you are from Hawaii.
Yes.
And it's just like so crazy. It's like we're from the same island, but we never met. We know similar people. So it's so great to finally meet you, talk with you. So let's just dive right into your story.
Sure.
What got you to the place that you are now, being a competitive powerlifter, gym owner, and hosting a podcast that's focused on female powerlifters?
I know, it's like weird to think about it, because if I have to date back and think where it all started, I would have never, ever thought I'd be where I am now. Even doing a podcast and like hosting it about powerlifting, like that was probably the furthest thing from my mind 10 years ago. And, I, like you said, like I started off Tahitian dancing. I probably did every type of dance. That was my background. So my mom and my father's a musician. He's a Hawaiian musician. He plays steel guitar. And then my mother is a dancer, cultural arts. We kind of had like that background. Fitness was always kind of part of our life. Like my dad, he used to always go to the gym. He was like 4 a.m. He'd be at the gym, kind of just like maintaining, I guess you would say, he's one of those guys. My degree, I graduated University of Hawaii Hilo in a degree with kinesiology. So at the time, I wanted to be a physical therapist. So I was planning to go to PT school. I was working in a PT clinic for a while. And then I just was like, this is not for me. Like, I was like, I wanted to work with athletes, and they didn't really work with athletes. And I almost couldn't see that happening. And I was working for MAC Cosmetics in Hilo at the time. And that actually was working out really well. I was doing good. I loved artistry. I could sell. I could do these things. And I was like, yeah, I can make money doing this. Like, this is gonna be legit for me. So at the time I was married, we moved to Oahu from the Big Island. And we kind of lived apart for a while, where there was this whole time where he had to live there because he was supposed to start a police academy. And there was this kind of separation of the police academy and all this stuff. So anyways, we had to live apart. That put a lot of stress on our relationship. And what ended up happening is, we ended up getting a divorce. But it ended up being like very bad ending. I was pregnant and he was having an affair, and it ended like that. So we, looking back now, it was a very super duper hard time, because my father was also diagnosed with cancer around the same time. So I was pregnant. I found out he didn't want to be with me anymore. Then my father had stage 3 cancer. And it was like all these things that happened. I started developing anxiety. I never had anxiety before. I was just one of those people that kind of let things go. So that was, I would say, a huge turning point for me, because I had been with him for so long. Here I am going to have a child. What the fuck am I going to do? And that sort of changed everything for me. once I had Kaimana's my last baby. Once I had Yumi, I decided to just get in shape. And I hate to say it, but you know, when like the best revenge is getting in shape, you know, like one of those things, the best revenge is looking better. That was like my goal. I was like, fuck this. I am going to fucking get back in shape. I tore my ACL in college, and I was like, I kind of, to me, let myself go. I didn't exercise anymore. I didn't dance Tahitian anymore. I didn't do any kind of sports anymore. You know, once I tore my ACL playing basketball, I didn't go back to basketball anymore. It was like, I kind of just lost myself. And so I tried to rediscover myself through fitness. And then that's when I met my husband. And like we were talking about off air, we totally met on MySpace. And we lied to people for many years and told him that, and said that he like tried to come at me and was like, oh, I came up to her at the mall and she was looking hot, and everybody believed it for years. So it worked out great.
For those of you who don't know what MySpace is, right?
Yeah, before Tinder, okay? I know, isn't that funny? It was like right at the tail end of it.
Free Facebook.
It was like right at the tail end of MySpace. Like Facebook was just starting to like be out of college people, you know? So like it wasn't just the college people, now was starting to open up. Yeah, so he totally found me online, and I was not trying to like even date anybody. I was like, I am just trying to get my life back, and I am trying to it's about me and my child. And I was, you know, and we fell in love. And he, you know, we were just talking about it today, but we have such a good relationship, my husband and I. And, you know, we've gone through our own ups and downs. I mean, he deployed, and we've gone through all these huge life changes, but you know, I think I'm more in love with him now than I even was then. It's just a different kind of like very deep love. And I feel very lucky that happened, because he actually was the one he was really into fitness, and he sort of encouraged me to kind of get back into it. So I started off with like Zumba, and then P90X and Insanity, you know, all the things that don't involve the gym right away, you know, where I could just do it at home. And, you know, that's why I don't give people a hard time when they're like, oh, no, I don't know. I just get a bad taste when people say things like, oh, it's not that fucking Zumba shit. You know, we don't do that. I go, yeah, but everybody has a place.
Everybody starts somewhere, right?
Everybody starts somewhere.
I started with Zumba, man. Like,
yes. And just think about that. Like,
totally.
You know, it's like so many people are trying to find a spot where they feel comfortable in. And then that's the first step, you know, and I never knock anybody who does that kind of stuff. And I say, one day that's going to be not enough for you. And that's when you'll be like, hey, I want to come and weight train. And then maybe it'll be powerlifting, you know? So that's kind of what started it. And then I got really into, first it was powerlifting. It was just regular weight training. And then I was deadlifting with like an easy bar at the gym. Like they didn't even have a bar. So I thought that's how you deadlifted. I'm over there with like 10 pounds at the end. You know how low to the ground that is? Like, you're like, you're like so low to the ground. I think about it. I'm like, oh my God. But I was doing it, you know, that's all that mattered. And I was getting it done. But one of our buddies, Devin's friend, when they were deployed, he was into powerlifting. And so we had never heard anything about that. So Devin started powerlifting with him in Iraq. And looking back, I used to laugh because he like could not back squat really that good. And he's just like he just looked awful. But we were like, oh, this is cool. And so when him and Ronnie came back, Ronnie entered a powerlifting competition that was a USPA one that Daryl and all of them, Mana Barbell, hosted at one of the high schools. And that was the first time I ever saw him meet. And went there with the kids, and that's where I saw Susan. And I knew of Susan because she was a bodybuilder who trained with the powerlifters, and she kind of was dabbling in that. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. She's like my height, my weight. She's, you know, lifting weights. And, you know, so I looked up to that, you know, I was like, oh, that's kind of like what I want to be able to do. And then that kind of took off. We ended up moving to Missouri after that. And then we started continued powerlifting. I tried it. And I think we did one meet. It was like a really crappy, unsanctioned meet. And then I got really into bodybuilding. So then I started doing bikini and kind of still did the lifts, but, you know, focused more on that bodybuilding aspect. And then after a couple years of that, I ended up hiring a coach. I was training with Dexter Jackson and his wife, and they don't do anything like that, you know? And it's one of those things, it's like, if I'm hiring a coach, I'm going to do what they tell me. So I didn't do any back squats, no benching, definitely no deadlifting, because that would make your waist thick. So I didn't do that, so I did that for many years. And then I just got really tired of bodybuilding. The last show I did, and it wasn't my coach's fault, it was my fault, because my body wasn't changing anymore. And I was like, listen, I got to do this show in New York because all my family decided to buy tickets. My husband was like, surprise, I'm going to come. So I had to do it. I couldn't back out. I was like, oh my God, like everybody came. But in bodybuilding, if you know your body isn't there and it's not show ready, you shouldn't do a show. And my body felt it was too high. It just wasn't responding. I was doing 2 to 3 hours of cardio. I had 1,000 calories. I was still weight training. It was like, it just wasn't responding anymore. And I'm a natural athlete. So I didn't take anything to cut or anything like that. So it wasn't, to say the least, it wasn't my best showing. But after that, I was just burnt out. And my husband was like, are we going to have a baby? Because we both have one child from our previous marriages. So we both have 2 kids that are almost the same age. They're 2 months apart. And they're like having twins. They're like best buds. They're so different, but they're really close. I feel very lucky. And so he was like, are we going to have another baby? Are we going to have a baby? Come on. I mean, he's like, you're getting older. You need to have a baby. I was like, yeah, I know. But he was right. I wanted another child too, but I kind of was like, really wanted to get my pro card. I was like, I really want to get that pro card. But at that point I realized it's going to take more than just being lean. Like I really need to put on a lot more muscle, and that was going to take a long time. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall a little bit. I was like, I just think this is my time. If I do it, maybe it'll be a couple of years from now and I've built enough muscle to have a better competitive natural physique. So then after that, I just was like, fuck it. Went and I started doing Power Athlete, which is a CrossFit, at the time was kind of a CrossFit affiliate. So it's like a CrossFit football. They do big lifts, but it's a little bit more athletic. It's a little different. And I loved it. I got stronger. I mean, I was just trying to pull 300 at that time. I had never pulled 300. So, that was like the thing for me. And then I got pregnant literally like the month right after. So it was nice. I got huge. I think that I got really big partly because I was I use the term metabolically damaged loosely, but I think my metabolism was probably just waiting for me to just eat everything it possibly could. So I went from 130 to giving birth at like 205. It was like, I put on a lot of weight. Within a month I was like, holy shit, I am like 30 pounds heavier and it's been 4 weeks. What's going on? Like, it was crazy. And luckily my husband, he's a wonderful, wonderful man. He always made me feel comfortable. But once I hit 200 on that scale, I was like, I am not looking. I know I have to check in and I have to step on this thing. But otherwise I was healthy. I trained every day. I was training clients every day. I was even squatting the day of, hoping that the baby would come out, and she was late. And I was like, man, dude, like how much longer do I have to have you in there? But so then, after that, I just kind of went back to powerlifting. So that was my motivation. So 6 months after I gave birth, I entered a powerlifting meet, and that was my thing. I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Yeah. I'm just going to commit to it. We had one local, and, I think I had gotten down to like almost 165 to 170. So I'd lost a good amount. And it was just nice to be under the bar again and perform, and feel good about myself for performance, and then after that, I just kept training. So, now it's been almost 4 years I'm back. So really I haven't been training that long. It's been off and on. I guess I would say for the last 8 years or so, but I would say since I had my daughter, well, right before her, I started to focus more on performance, and I haven't turned back. I enjoy powerlifting because it just makes me feel better performing, doing stuff instead of just visual. It's what if they don't like my hair color? It's always that kind of thing. Like when you're bodybuilding, it's like, oh, it's your suit, you should have more rhinestones, or maybe you should wear your hair up, half down, or, I'm just like, the fuck, it's like those kind of things. It just, I don't like that anymore, and
especially when you've trained so hard, like you were saying, what you went through to get to that one show of like, 2 hours of cardio, and you're only on 1,000 calories, and you're literally sacrificing so much. And then to like get up there and then to be like judged next to somebody and say like, well, you're not good enough because you don't look like her. It's like,
Yeah.
but I've like given everything, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
think
is hard. And it's like going in, you know, that's what it is. So it's almost like you got to wear your big girl panties, you know, it's like, but then I realized, you know, it's like, what is the value of that? Why am I doing it? You know,
Right.
because my husband didn't even like when I was that skinny. Like he totally likes me at this weight. I'm 140. I probably have like 25% body fat, if not a little bit more. And he totally likes, he's like, you can get fatter and I'd be totally okay with that. So it was like, what am I doing this for if I'm trying to get, you know, I had a six pack, you know, and he's like, he didn't really like that. He was like, it's cool. I see your hard work and I'm happy that you're, you know, doing hard work. But if you're asking me what's more attractive, I mean, I like you at a, you know, well, you look healthier. And I used to look very gaunt and I had my big cheeks were gone. And so then I really did start thinking about like, why did I do this? I enjoyed doing it. But then once I stopped enjoying it, I just was like, no, it's not for me. It's time to move on. I enjoyed learning how to diet. I feel like there's a lot of discipline that goes into that. And that to me helped me a lot, but otherwise I'm over it. So now we moved, let's see, from that point, we moved to Texas. That's where I saw Susan and I started training with Susan Salazar, who was, you know, one of the first people I ever met in powerlifting or knew of. And I expected this like huge human being. And she's like this little muscle, little muscle person. Like I'm the little nugget. I'm 5'1" on a good day. She's like 4'11", 5 feet. And I remember standing there next to her. I was like, oh my God, you're so much smaller than I thought you'd be. You look so much bigger in pictures. She's like, I know, everybody says that. So then I started training with her. That's when I really started getting introduced to conjugates. So prior to that, I was doing more of a linear periodization or block when you're talking about programming. But she had followed a conjugate programming and I had never done conjugate. So I was really excited to, you know, try this style of programming. And that had done really great for me. She was able to take my squat up at the time at the last meet. I think my squat was like 225. Like I could barely squat. My squat had, prior to that, I think it was 265. And then after I had the baby, I just couldn't, everything felt loose. Nothing felt right. I could always have a strong back, but so I think I pulled like 319 or something at the meet, but my squat was like horrible. So she got my squat back up to 265. My bench went up 15 pounds. And then this is like in a year. And then my deadlift went up to 330. So I mean, it was a good amount of a PR and my weight went down. So I went down to 132. I was competing in the 132 weight class at that point. And I loved it. It was like, it was so nice. The people in Texas, I had this group of girls and it was like the first time I had trained with a bunch of girls who were strong and, you know, they were powerlifters and they were strong and they were stronger than me. And that's what I loved because I needed people stronger than me. And there just wasn't a lot of strong women around. So I ended up being the strongest and I'm not even that strong. You know what I mean? Like I need to be around people like you know, who are like pulling and squatting. And I love that. That motivates me. So after that, we moved here where I'm at now in Alabama to open our own gym. So now we have a gym that's been open a year and a half almost. Core strength and performance. And it's really like a gym. Really the goal for me is to have more women weight training. So we do conditioning and all that, but the goal is to just get more women comfortable weight training. Out here, there's not a lot of women who do it. It's not as common as Hawaii. Even Hawaii to me have more people who are into fitness. In California, it's like common, you know, whereas here it's not really like that. So I'm trying to create a small community of women who are coming from the woodworks. We got people from all over different parts of Huntsville that are coming because we host a free open gym on Saturday for powerlifting. So if you are a powerlifter, just come over because we got a lot of fun stuff. Not a lot of gyms have cambered bars, belt squats, you know, deadlift bar, you know, like simple things that powerlifters want, but they can't find. So I do the open gym in order to kind of like wrangle them in. And if they're cool people, and they all have, not one person has came and was like a dick or anything like that. And so we've sort of created a small community of people that are very encouraging, helping each other out. So I have kids from like college that come and they're just learning how to powerlift. And so we're working on technique. And so it's really rewarding for me because I feel like I'm giving back to the community in a way, you know, and still being able to kind of maybe affect more women and bring more women into strength training. So That's kind of the gist of it. I'm sorry, that was really long-winded.
No, we love it. We love it. Yeah.
Okay.
What you're doing is so great because, you know, I mean, even out here, we have a pretty decent community, but I still notice that it's like when it gets close to a meet, we get a lot of people in the gym. And then right after that, it's like we don't see anybody. And it's really hard to build a community that really sticks around year long, that is the process of getting stronger year long. So, you know, even right now in my own training, I train with all guys.
Yeah.
Like you know, and so it's like, I would love another woman to train with, but there's, you know, unfortunately, it's like, that's just the way it is. It's like people get really excited for a meet, and then afterwards they're, you know, okay, you know, I'm going to take some time to myself. And I think that that's such a misconception. It's like, you need to be training year long, but maybe part of the struggle is really finding that community.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
right. No, I agree. And I think I find a lot of women take the bullet a little bit, like, oh, I have to be home with the family, you know, like it's okay to do for a couple of weeks. But once that's done, the pressure is like, you can't do that all the time. You know, you have a child, you have, you know, when are you going to make time for yourself? So, I mean, I just find that I do hear a lot more of that. And I think it's just the guilt, and it's sort of that, unfortunately, how do you get past that? Like, how do you relay that to your husband or your parents who might be watching the kids? How do you have that conversation and not feel guilty about it? Because I do think that there's a lot of guilt involved. You know, the younger people who don't have kids might be easier for them to just come in. It might, you know, whereas like I have some people that are like, you know, I have to take care of my parents, you know, like, and I have to call my brother in order to come and train, you know, it's like one of those things. So it's unfortunate, but you know, I do find that that's more often with women than it is with men, you know?
I think that's actually such a great point that you made. Like, I never even thought about that because I don't have kids or a husband that I have to worry about. So I'm like, come on, I can train all the time. You know, so
that sort of responsibility, like where you don't think about it, you know, you can take that time more. But I feel like when I talk to a lot of women who want to get in the gym, I just had a conversation with somebody today who her kid is in jiu-jitsu, and her kid is in a higher level of jiu-jitsu, and so she can't make it because the time overlaps. And so I was like, well, you can make it to this time, you know, trying to work it out. But then it's like, well, then she needs to also spend time with them and not feel guilty that she is spending the only time that she has available on herself, you know? So it is a struggle that I've had, you know, as well, because especially when I was competing, I think when I was competing in bodybuilding, I did a lot more time in the gym. And I used to think like, no, you know, this is my time. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I need my time too. And my husband was very supportive of that. But now I only train 3 days a week. You know, I make that time for sure. Like after this, I'm going to the gym, but I've been up since 5, you know, like kids, work, you know, we had to go to jiu-jitsu, and then it's this, and then I'm going to, you know, train, but I'm forcing myself to train, you know, like I'm like, I got to, if I got to get it in. And, it is a little bit of staying committed to something, you know, like I think women need to, men and women, but women, I think women need to commit to their own selves and not feel guilty about it, and have maybe a conversation with somebody about it, you know, like her husband, and just say, you know, like, I just need this maybe twice a week, because twice is better than nothing. You know, even if it's on a Saturday, it's still better than nothing. And I was telling somebody I know today, I was like, she has an illness. So for her, it's even harder, because at the end of the day, she doesn't want to work out. She's just so exhausted, but her illness makes it harder for her. I said, you know what, then just go on Saturday. Just go once, because I think once you take that first step and are consistent with that, just every Saturday, then doing it on Tuesday doesn't seem as bad. Or maybe now you have more energy. So that smaller step is easier to get there. And I think that's important, taking small steps that you can really win at versus trying to overhaul your diet, overhaul your workout schedule, you know, meal plan, you know, it's like that's too much, and it's not a good lifestyle change because you can't stick to it. I mean, the best way you're going to do it is adherence. So what's the first step that you can do, you know?
Yeah, I think that goes with everything too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. What do you think your biggest lesson has been in your journey through powerlifting? or lessons, plural, whatever.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Probably the biggest one, which I think is pervasive in fitness, is the comparison, right? So if you're not comparing yourself in bodybuilding, which is the worst, because then you're comparing yourself with the best bodies on Instagram or the best pro, and my husband used to always tell me, he's like, you're not a pro. You're not going to look like that. Like you're not there yet. So don't compare yourself with them.
Right.
But then it gets into powerlifting, and then I'm comparing with other people's lifts. Well, she's my height, she's my weight, she's, well, she's got 5 kids, like she's gave birth 5 times. So you've only gave birth twice, so it's, and I think that has been a big lesson for me, because I realized that in the end, it doesn't really matter. So like, then you have to really think about, like, why are you doing this?
Right.
When I started doing this, unfortunately, 1 was to get revenge, but 2 was to gain my health back, because I saw myself leading the same way as my father. So my dad and I, we ate the same foods. We would just freaking chicken katsu and rice. We'd eat spam and eggs, all the things that probably are not your healthiest, quote unhealthiest. But my dad, he was into fitness. My mom was the one that was a little overweight. So we always thought, oh, she might be the one who might have problems. And she was the one who actually ended up being the one with like great veins. Like that's actually how we found out my dad had cancer. My sister-in-law was a radiologist. They were checking my mom because my grandmother started developing blockage in her veins. And so my mom thought, oh my gosh, maybe I will, get it too. And so my sister-in-law was like, why don't you go get it? Come over, we'll get you the scan. It was like a $5,000 scan or something. They scan your whole body. It checks all your veins. It does all this stuff. So my mom was like, well, Dwight, why don't you get a scan? He's like, nah, I don't need one. And he was starting to get this lipoma, which is like a fat pocket. People develop these lipomas in like weird spots. And it pretty much is just like a sack of fat that just develops somewhere, just for whatever reason. That's not life threatening or anything, but he was developing one right here. And it was so gross. It looked like 2 biceps. So when he would flex, it would be like this. It was so gross. And he would not see the doctor for it. And I was like, Dad, that is disgusting. But he was a musician. He thought it would mess up his arm when he was playing. So he was like, no, I don't want to do it. Well, so my sister-in-law's, well, how about my dad's like, why don't we scan my arm? She's like, no, I have to scan your whole body. You're like, all right. So they scan my dad and my mom. Mom's, oh, you got like veins of a 35-year-old. You look great. She's like, but Dad, I don't know. I think you need to go to the doctor. We see something here, see something there. So at that time, he was supposed to get a colonoscopy. When you're 50, you're supposed to get it. He was already like 56 or something like that. Gets a colonoscopy, stage 3 colon cancer.
Oh my God.
And that's how we found out. Otherwise, he would have never gone to the doctor. It would have progressed. And they said he at least had it for like 10 years because the way it was, how it was growing. Yeah. So he had at least 10 years. So if he had gone, he would have seen it. They would have known. They would have seen it right away. And so when he got diagnosed, it was like a huge shock to all of us because he was like healthy. He was a healthy man. He used to smoke back in the day, but he was pretty much a healthy dude. And then I was just fearful that Yumi was going to live with a mom who's going to develop cancer at 40 because now I got to do it 10 years earlier, because of him, so it was like, I had that moment and that's what really started everything. So at one point I sat there and I said, what am I doing? Like I'm starving myself in order to get this body to look a certain way. And I'm on this machine. My fucking back hurts all the time. I'm in a bad mood. I probably have low, levels of everything that's supposed to be a good marker of health. And I had to reflect and ask myself, like, why am I doing this? I'm doing it because I wanted to be healthier and live a healthier life for me and my family. And that I wanted to show that is what you need to do, and it might not be eating perfect, but it's trying to eat better and trying to incorporate exercise and all these things. And then that's when I just realized I got to stop comparing myself because that's not what really matters, and then those kind of things were no longer a marker for me. Sure, I still do it where I'm like, fuck, I got to beat her because she's going to be at Worlds. she's got like 50 pounds on me, but and I think that's important as a competitor. You need to know you need to have that drive still. Like I'm still trying to improve myself, but I'll never do it at the sacrifice of my body, I guess you could say. I will push my limits, but I am not going to push so far that I'm going to pull when I know my back is jacked up and I'm just going to pull through it, work through it. I'm sorry, that's not me. That might be other people and that's fantastic. More power to them, but it's just, I know what's important for me. And that is not, I want to be able to play with my kids. I have a 3-year-old and 2 9-year-olds. Like I go to their school all the time. I help in their garden. You know, I can't do that if I'm all jacked up. And I know a lot of friends that are like that. They're like, I can't even like throw the football with my kid. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, you know, you want to have, there's going to be times like that, but you can't be like that all the time. That's definitely something that, you know, you need to reevaluate what's important for you. I would say that that's been the biggest struggle for me, but now it's not anymore. I don't really compare. I'm in it for the long haul. I really enjoy powerlifting and I'm okay with saying I'm not the strongest. Hell, I just did a squat test the other day because I'm starting a new program. I did 175 for 5. I was like, that makes my max at like 200. You know, like my max was 275 7 months ago. You know, so it's like one of those things where I had to put other things on the back burner and my training was one of them. And then I got hurt. And so I had to, you know, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with sharing that too now. Whereas before I might've not showed that video. Now I'm like, no, this is where I'm at. It's reality. And 205 is where I'm at. And I might not be 265 in a couple weeks, which is totally fine. I might not even be at the end of the year, but I'm okay. I'm not trying to beat the next girl next to me. So I'm just trying to be a better me.
Yeah. Accepting where you are, you know?
Totally.
Showing up for yourself and accepting where you are.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I think that's such a great lesson that you've learned from powerlifting, but it's so interesting because like getting you into this area of fitness was kind of this toxic relationship, right? This breakup that you had, your first divorce, right?
Yes.
What do you think was that the biggest relationship that you took from that event?
Oh man. There's a lot of lessons in a divorce. Let me tell you, I think looking back now, because we're totally cool now. Me and my ex are totally cool. And we, on the surface of things, it looked like we had a great relationship. Now looking back, we did argue a lot. We kind of grew up together in a sense that we went through our early 20s together. So it was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying. I used to DJ. We used to have those kind of fights, you know, where you're like all drunk and stupid. And so we had a lot of those growing moments, I think, that sort of chipped away at the relationship, you know, but we were good friends. And at some point, you know, it just sort of fizzled. And I think it's when we started living separate. So when I started living on Oahu and then we started going back and forth, it just wasn't enough, I think, to keep the relationship. And I think he was probably faking it more to kind of keep it up. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think he really thought, no, it's just a phase. You know, I'm just feeling whatever I'm feeling is just because we're separated kind of thing. And I mean, I heard that he had an affair at that time and I didn't know about it, but come to find out, like somebody had came up to my mother and everything was like, oh yeah, I know he was dating this girl over here. That's the bartender. And yeah, which is crazy to even think. So and I look at it, and when he ended up moving to Oahu, we decided to have a baby because we went through the whole route. This is another thing where I laugh because you think you're doing the right thing, you know, like, oh, you're going to school, you're getting married, you know, you get your degree first, you get married, then you have children, then you buy, you know, home, you know, you go through this checklist of what you think is the right way, which will lead you to the right life. And all of that was out the window because we went through that checklist. We decided to try to get pregnant. I had a miscarriage the first time. It was, you know, devastating. And then we tried to get pregnant again, and then I got pregnant. And so you think you're going through the right route, you know, like, all right, and the whole time I think he's already disconnected, but he's kind of going through the motions of it because I think he thought that was the right thing, you know, like, oh, this will make it right. You know, it'll fix it. And now looking back, I can say that. If you were to ask me then, I would say, no, he's a cheating motherfucker. And fuck him. You know, like that would have been my thought then. Now looking back, I can, I think, be aware and mature enough to know where the relationship drifted and where he might've struggled with that. And me, you know, I think I struggled many times as well, but I kept it like, oh no, we're still going to keep it together. Whereas I think he was already like too far gone. So when he ended up having an affair with a friend of mine, and it was a bad circle, that whole mess was hard because I always thought he would never cheat on me. Like, it was this thing, like if anybody were to ask us, we had like the best relationship. You ask anybody, you know, it was like one of those things. So it was sort of this destruction of what I thought was perfect in a way, you know, like, oh, we have the best marriage. We have great friends. We have a good relationship. We're friends. We talk. And that all went out the window. And it was like, what the fuck? This is just, everything's a lie. You know, it doesn't matter that I did this right. It just ended up to shit anyway. And that was a huge lesson for me, because then I had to really think about what I did in the relationship. And I think there was a lot of things that I could have done better as a wife. I could have been more understanding in areas where I think I had this, and I think it comes with age maybe, because now I'm 37, been with my husband now for 9 years. But when I was with my ex, I was 20, I was hot-headed. I thought I was right for everything, you know? So I think I did a lot of those things where you're like, you know, like, he pissed me off, well, fuck you then, I'm out. You know, that kind of attitude, and that doesn't lead anywhere, you know? And I think I did too much of that, where I could have been like, not always trying to be right. Now, was that the destruction of the relationship? No. I mean, the catalyst was, you know, him having an affair. I don't think that that's what did it though. You know, it was these little things over the years that just tore it down. So I think that looking back, I always said, I'm not going to do those things if I have a relationship later. Because I really, at that point, once it was already done, I said to myself, like, you need to stop being an ass about certain things, like being so hard-headed about certain things, always butting heads about certain things that you don't need to. You don't always need to be right about this stupid, whatever. It was stupid things. Like, I look back, I'm like, why the fuck was I trying to argue that point? You know, because it led to a huge fight. Like, it led to the whole night turning into something stupid, you know? And so I think I even read this book. It's called, which I recommend to anybody, even if you're not married, it's called Marriage Fitness, which I think is kind of ironic now that I'm in fitness. But at the time, it really talked about how keeping a relationship together is like fitness. It takes little things you have to do all the time. And I felt like I learned a lot from that. I was reading the book in an attempt to save my marriage, but I feel like that helped me a lot with this marriage, because I do things like tell him how I love him, or something about him that I love. I try to do that every day, or I try to touch him every day. Simple things, you know, like, I know that he likes to be shown love by me, just affection, not hugging him. Like, there's a fine line with my husband, and he likes to know that I touch his shoulders or those kind of things. And I do it every day. And I took that for granted before. I didn't take those lessons. And now I think with this marriage ending, I learned how to be a better wife, I guess you could say, a better partner. You know, what can I bring to the relationship to make him feel more confident and him feel better? Whereas I think maybe I kind of didn't care a lot of times. I said I would, but I was like, fuck it, you're a grown ass man, you know? And like, I always felt like he whined about shit. So I'd be like, and I was kind of like the dude in the relationship sometimes. And I was like, fuck, why is this, you know, like that was my mentality, when I should have been a little bit more understanding, I think. If you were to ask my friends would probably say like, no, fuck that. You know, you were understanding, you know, they would see the others, they would say that. But I think if I'm being honest to myself, you know, that's definitely something that, I always work on, because it's still not something that comes naturally. A lot of it too, you know, it's a lot of it do not come natural. And it's like, you have to try, you know, you have to actually put forth an effort to either kiss him or, you know, this. And because when that's good, everything else is good. Kids are happy, you know, the house life is happy, you know, everything stems from that. So when our relationship is good, everything else is better. But I think that is probably the biggest lesson I learned from the divorce. And I'm happy that happened. You know, I would never change anything. He's happy. He married this wonderful woman who is now my daughter's stepmom. And I feel lucky that she loves my daughter like that. You know, like I feel lucky that that's his relationship is good now because he felt shame for so long, very, very shame. And I forgave him before he forgave himself. Like he was definitely, after all that fizzled with the girl, he felt awful. And, I think he suffered depression and all that because he was probably going through his own thing, and, he just couldn't fix it in his head too. So, that has been helpful for me, to just forgive him. Like, hey, come on, we got to co-parent. We got to be good parents. And now we're really good at it now. I mean, we're not going to be best friends or anything like that, but it's definitely, it's like one of those things where I can talk to him. Before I couldn't even talk to him. Like I didn't want to see him. Like, and I was still angry. There was a lot of anger, and now I'm like, no, I don't want to hang out with you, but I also don't want to puke when I see your face anymore. So that's good.
But that's just so powerful because you really were able to just transform that and really look within you and say, like, how can I grow from this? And I think that that's what we all need to do, from even like the most horrible situations where maybe you weren't even at fault, but like, how can I grow and evolve from this, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I feel like we talked to you for so long about this. Oh my God. Yeah, right. But before we ask you our final question, is there anything that we haven't asked you that you would like, or final message that you would like to leave with our audience that we haven't talked about so far?
I just always hope that women will, I guess that I always hope that women will forgive themselves for things that they have done. I feel like I've forgiven myself for the things and the shitty things I've done and tried to learn from that. And that's easier said than done. But I think it takes a lot of honest talking. And how would you have changed that? And that I've looked back and like, how would I have handled that situation or this situation or that relationship differently? And I feel that that's helped me become very humble and know that I'm not perfect in a lot of areas. And that's helped me be empathetic to other people as well, where maybe I wasn't as empathetic. And I also want women to strength train. I want every woman to just reach out to another woman. And that's why I do this free open gym, so that if anybody does come, just know that I am like totally an open book. I would never judge. I want you to just come in, even if you don't know shit, because I think taking care of our bodies and performing, fitness for performance versus fitness to try to look good all the time, is a huge, huge deal. And I think that once we start shifting that thought from calories and I just got to work out because I ate a cake, or, once we start moving away from that to, I want to, get a heavier squat. I need to train because I'm weak in my quads. I think that is where I'd be so happy to see where women are just taking that power and empowering themselves through their body with weight training. That would be my final, like, hurrah. Like, and there is science now that weight training is better for your heart than cardio. That is a newest study that just came out.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, maybe the doctors will be on it instead of 30 minutes of vigorous exercise or whatever they like to say, But yeah, that would be my closing thoughts.
That's awesome. I love that. Just being powerful in every way, shape, and form.
I love it.
For our last question, we like to leave our listeners with some little tidbits. So what are your 3 tips that our audience could take today to uplift their lives?
Sure. I think one of my first ones, and this is not for everybody, is to meditate. I was just having this conversation with my husband. Some people, maybe it's prayer. I'm Buddhist, so I sort of rediscovered meditation later on in life. I kind of stepped away from it a long time. And I started to find, reaching out for religion again, like, where am I in these things? And so I started meditating, and it was really kind of crappy in the beginning. I couldn't get it. My breathing was weird. I didn't understand the whole process. But I stuck to it. I used the Headspace app. So if you guys ever want to try it, that Headspace app is where it's at. You kind of go through the whole basics of it. But that has helped me become a more calm, less reactive person. And that has to be the one major thing that's been good for me. And I had to be consistent. It wasn't until like 30 days did I realize when I'm sitting there talking to my 3-year-old, like, hey, I'm not like yelling at her right away for something I used to, you know, I just was less reactive. So I would say if you are willing to give it a try, start off with 5 to 10 minutes, try the Headspace app. If you end up buying it, it's like $12, but I think it's been one of the best things I could have ever done. And it's helped me with my breathing and squatting and deadlifting, because you have to really focus on breathing through the diaphragm, which I did. They tell you to breathe normal, but I tried to incorporate more of that breathing. That's really helped me sort of control that breathing. I would say not journal, but log all your lifts. I think women are good about that. Sometimes guys aren't. I think logging your numbers and really taking a look and being consistent is the number one thing. So even if it's only one day a week, you know, try to show up one day a week, you know, that's going to be more helpful than you going balls to the walls for 2 weeks and then not coming back. I know it's a simple one, but I know people still need to do that. And I do like writing everything down. I still have my planner from like 10 years ago, looking at all my old stuff. I don't even know what my third would be. What is something I like to do? I try to stay to a schedule. So I wake up at between 5 and 5:15, and I try to go to bed between 10 and 10:30. And it's the same kind of thing. One tip I like is I listen to something growth development wise every morning. So whether it's a podcast, an audiobook, something to that nature, when I'm doing my makeup and my hair, that's when I listen to it. And it's every day. That's my time to sort of grow, where I don't have the kids around. They're not yelling at me, and I can be focused on that. To me, that's great, because then you can consume so much and have this time where you're not watching TV, so to say. I used to put the TV on. That was my thing before. Like, oh, I'd watch the Today Show. But to me, that didn't do anything for me, you know? And so now it's like I listen to a podcast, and it's so much better for me, because I'm just consuming so much more information. So I guess those would be my 3 tips.
I love it. I love it. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Lastly, before we sign off, where can everyone learn more about you, connect with you, listen to your podcast, all of that?
All right. So I have an Instagram for the podcast, but I don't really use it that much because I actually have to manage so many social media for my work too.
God,
so I have too many. So like, you know, where you add an account, so like, you can't add any more. I'm all, dude, like,
oh my
what can
God.
I do? So I have to log one out and log the other. Anyways. So Core, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. It's Core, CORES and P. So Core Strength and Performance. If you just type in Core Strength and Performance, will pop up. That's where you'll hear about all our newest podcasts. We do all our training there. You can find us at core256.com, which is our website, as well as the Tahiti Fet, which is the other event we do. We're going to have our last Tahiti Fet in San Jose this next year in July, 4th of July weekend. That is just Tahiti Fet. I think it's just Tahiti Fet on Instagram, or TahitiFet.com. So Tahiti and then FETE.com. And that is, I think that's everywhere you can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being so open and sharing your story with us. It's been so amazing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was really nice.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing a piece of your day with us.
Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to us on.
To continue the conversation, follow Catherine and Randy on social media. Our links are listed in the show notes.
We can't wait to share another powerful story with you next week. And until then,
stay uplifted.